Having flown back home to Suffolk for a few days, we flew back on the 2nd of June. 4 hours after closing the door in Suffolk, we were back on board the boat in Troon. For once, EasyJet and the railways worked as advertised. The boat was okay, and escaped the birds that had invaded this Hallberg Rassi in the few days we'd been away. Now the Onyx had also kept their word and supplied a replacement chip for the plotter. The old chip was slightly out of date, which was down to me not being prepared to spend £100 replacing it when in previous years the replacement cost had only been £50. More importantly, the old chip had sections of the Irish coast missing, and areas surrounding the missing sections were not showing position accurately. I was keen to see if the replacement chip displayed the missing sections and how up to date it was. Right, well, after the excitement of falling off the edge of the world, let's see if we can find something and which way around it goes. Fingers crossed. Ah, we have data. Now the secret is to find out if there's any data in Ireland. Oh, they must have transferred my waypoints, because yeah, they must have transferred the waypoints, because that's what I put in when there was nothing there.
Unless it's saved on your plotter.
No, the only place it can save anything is on the SD card, I think. Anyway, it works.
Good.
I suppose the other interesting thing will be to find out if it's an up-to-date one and if there's any wind farms. You know, it's got all the waypoints from the Line series, not the Lines, for the 3 Clubs race.
You better have a beer to celebrate then.
Well, we'll celebrate if we can see a wind farm.
You have 2 beers if you see a wind farm.
Well, there are lights there. Don't know whether that really equates to a wind farm.
No.
What's that? It's not a wind farm?
No, I haven't added it.
Bugger.
They just added the bit that was missing.
We spent the afternoon stocking up on food at Tesco's. The one thing we could not get was quiche. In fact, we never managed to get quiche anywhere in Scotland, no matter how big the store. Apparently, real Scotsmen don't eat quiche. Our first destination on the second part of our voyage was back to Campbelltown, which is the best departure port for rounding the Mull of Kintyre. The weather carried on as if we'd never been away. Bright, sunny, no wind. We left at 9:30 on the 3rd of June and motored the 36 miles across the Clyde. There's an old dock going in there, isn't there? I've always been nervous of these things since I found myself on a head-on course with one at a closing speed of 50 knots. This one had obviously seen us, wasn't even up to full speed. Or perhaps they do slow down and reduce visibility. Oh, got really gone to hide again. We left Campbelltown at 6 o'clock on the 4th of June to catch the first of the ebb down the eastern side of the Mull. The wind was light southerly to start off with, and we motor-sailed for a while, but it soon built to 25 knots or so. The pilot advised going outside Sand Island to avoid overfalls in the Sound, so we headed out close hauled past the island. As we bore away to go round the Mull, we were making around 9 knots over the ground, which meant the tide was only giving us about 1.5 knots, as it was almost at the bottom of Leaps. Even so, the seas were fairly lumpy, and as we bore away further and slowed down in a falling wind, the main began to slam as the apparent wind wasn't enough to overcome the motion. We actually turned the engine on for half an hour to allow us to sheet in and stop the banging. Part of the problem is that the pilot's advice is to stay at least 2 miles off the Mull to avoid the worst of the seas. But the TSS is only 2 miles offshore, so you're forced into the edge of the overfalls. We passed the point about 1.5 miles off. Once clear of the Mull, the wind picked up again, and under a pulled-out jib, we surfed for a time at up to 10 knots. Port Ellen is built around a small bay at the eastern end of a much bigger bay. The mouth of the bigger bay is protected for 3/4 of its width by a reef of rocks, leaving a fairly narrow entrance at the western end of the bay between the lighthouse and a green navigation buoy, just visible to the right of the lighthouse. As we approached, a cruise liner anchored in the bay raised its anchor and headed for the entrance like a navy frigate on exercise, pulling G and heeling enough to spill the gin and tonics. We chickened out and went to hide among the rocks until it had passed.